Welcome to the You Are a Force podcast channel, your go-to space for real stories, fearless dreams, and unstoppable women rewriting the rules. And the force behind this podcast. Here is your host, Binoli Botadara.
Hi everyone, welcome to You're a Force, the podcast where we celebrate women who just don't decode success, but they deconstruct it, rebuild the blueprint for the next generations of power player. I'm your host Binoli Botadara, and today I have someone very, very special. She just doesn't simply speak on stages, but she reshapes the way people think. She's the voice behind a very popular podcast, which is a chart topping across the globe, a millennial mind, a TEDx speaker, and a serial entrepreneur. She's a communicator of ideas that linger definitely long after the applaud ends, and her work lives at the intersection of clarity, courage, and conscious ambition. So it's my absolute honor to welcome someone very special today, because the quality of life depends on the quality of thinking. And she has actually built a career helping people think better about success, about life, about creativity, identity, and much more. And I cannot wait to pick her brain about everything life. So without further ado, I would love to welcome and totally honor to have someone who is very special, Shivani Pau. Shivani, thank you so much for being on Your Force.
Oh, thank you so much for that introduction. That's so kind.
No, I genuinely believe every word I said, because I have been following your page on Instagram and otherwise, and then this is actually a surreal moment to actually follow someone, hear someone speak almost on a day-to-day basis, and then this is like my personal pinch me moment. So thank you for
Oh,
being
thank
on Your
you.
Course.
So sweet.
So I want to go back to the beginning, and before, the TEDx stage or the global conversations, I I definitely know that, you grew up watching your parents build
Yeah.
a business from the first generation of immigrants. And also, I want to understand about your childhood and before the confidence, clarity, and everything you do in between. What shaped your early childhood and who you became eventually?
I would say as a kid, I was always quite confident. I think we associate confidence now with being the most competent. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think I've always been somebody who I was never uncomfortable to speak to new people. And I've always been very curious as a kid. I was always somebody who talked a lot. I grew up in a house with three boys, and two of them were my cousins, one of them was my brother. So I was very much a tomboy growing up. But, because I struggled a lot in school, I always didn't know, I never knew what my strengths were. And I never thought that I was intelligent or smart. I just always thought that I just had to kind of get what I was given, because I was never top in my class or top in sports or top in anything. And, just being average at stuff, I used to really knock me. So in that way, I wasn't necessarily confident in myself. But outwardly, I think people wouldn't look at me and say I was a very nervous or very shy child.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a lot to do with the upbringing as well, right? How parents actually inculcate into a child, and I think that's how we see the world. And
Mm,
I definitely agree with that, because my parents, they encouraged me to have an opinion. Every dinner table, we would have a conversation, and my mom would always tell me that no matter if you come first or second, you have to take part in every competition in the school. So I would be
wow.
horrible at like some things, but I would still take part. So I never developed that sort of fear to talk to people, or stage fear and all of those things. So I definitely think that, I think that also has a lot to do with what they tell us about ourselves. So but I want to pick up on, your career. You went to Warwick to study law, but then you
Hmm.
eventually did not do law, and then you ended up doing an MBA. And
No, no, no. I didn't do an MBA. No, no.
okay, okay,
So I studied at law and sociology. I studied that as my undergraduate.
okay,
And I went into management consultancy.
okay.
And through the management consultancy, I went back to the business school and I studied a diploma, which was
Okay.
part of an MBA, but I didn't do an MBA.
Okay. So that
Yeah.
was in Warwick, right?
Yeah, both were in Warwick. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And so historically, how we see the career, if we take like a proper job, if we do all those things which are actually told us that, this is fancier looking thing,
Yeah.
but you actually created something very unique for yourself, and that is actually contradicting to what we've been told all our lives. So I want to understand that looking back, when you connect the dots, would you think actually became your greatest advantage, or also rather a distraction to pick these sort of choices which you did?
Which part? Because it's so I'm
So non-conventional, career choices when you took, rather
yeah.
than, I mean, you went to one of the best universities, did all of that, but you sort of created a started podcast in the pandemic. You
Mm.
became a coach. You started like this really, really unique sort of career choices you took, which are not really conventional, or which you don't
Yeah.
really read in the rule books.
Yeah, no, I think so. It's really interesting. Like I said, when I was younger, I actually had a different experience. My parents didn't encourage me to do everything. Like they didn't, they always used to, I was very average and that was pointed out as a bad thing. I think I had a different experience from you where it was something that I was then fearful of. So I grew up not really having a lot of belief in myself and not really thinking I was good at anything. And that was kind of exaggerated when I went to school and then university and then in my job because when I was at university, I wasn't the cleverest in the room. And then when I graduated, I got a graduate scheme in Nottingham. So I didn't get one in central London with all of my friends. And I never even believed that I was good enough to even get that. I just didn't grow up with a lot of self-belief because I defined myself by the grades that I was always getting.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, even though I did go to one of the best universities, I feel that I was always the one that was at the lowest and left behind. And I really struggled. Like I really, really, really struggled. And so for me, it wasn't really innate in me until I actually went to that graduate scheme and they said, everybody on this graduate scheme has to go to Warwick Business School to do a diploma. And when I saw that, I thought, oh my God, I'm not going back to Warwick to study. Like, this is the worst thing in the world.
Deja vu.
And they also said, if you leave before 2 years of being here, you'll have to pay the 15 grand back. And I said, I'm not doing it then because I didn't want to live in Nottingham. It was something I was going to do for 2 years. I was going to do the grad scheme, and then I was going to leave and come back to London. Anyway, I remember my parents saying, just do it. And then if they say, for example, you need to pay the money back, then just pay the money back. And I said, I'm not going to enjoy this course. I hated studying. I hated Warwick. I was traumatized to go back there, if I'm completely honest. Anyway, I was forced to do it. Everyone else was doing it, so I did it. And I just thought, okay, whatever, I'll have to do it. That course completely changed my life because it completely changed the way in which I thought about myself. Because for the first time, I enjoyed learning because the course was about practical learning. It was not about sitting in a classroom and getting a test from an exam paper. It was, let's learn this concept practically. So we would play different exercises, we would practice different things, and then we would go back into our organization, implement that idea, and then write about what we'd learned. And so for me, it was that real practical tool that allowed me to enjoy learning. Now, I've only just discovered now that I'm dyslexic and I probably have ADHD. And so for me, it makes a lot of sense now why in school I struggled so much to concentrate and to write and to get my thoughts down on an exam. But then when I went back to the business school, I enjoyed it so much because it was practical and I could kind of speak my way into it, And I think what that course really reminded me of is we all have our own individual strengths.
Yes.
Like I have been limited by this belief that I'm not clever enough, but actually maybe I was doing the wrong thing. There's this amazing quote by Einstein, and it says, if you judge a fish's ability to climb a tree, it will spend its whole life thinking it's a failure. Wow. And I think so many of us are always focusing on the things that we don't have, the things that we struggle with, the things that we're not good at, because we're always taught, like, focus on your improvements, focus on the things that you're not good at. You've got a B in this, so focus on that. You got an A in that, don't focus on that. I actually really believe in the opposite. I think you should focus in on what your strengths are and become the best in that. And basically, when I started to do my podcast and I started to have these conversations with people, I recognized it was a strength within me. I recognized it was something that I was naturally good at. It was something that I didn't have to prepare hours and hours for. I wouldn't, have to sit there memorizing all of this research. I would just get it. And I realized like, oh, well, maybe this is something that I'm good at. And I really loved it. So I spent so much time doing it. I was doing my corporate job and my podcast for 2.5 years. And it was only when I started building the business out that I quit. And I think people always think that I just took this massive risk, but I didn't actually. I was very, very risk averse.
Love that. Love that. Absolutely. Because it's not a small thing to do, like,
No.
building business and because I have started just like you in terms of just out of passion. And it's a lot of time consuming thing
Yeah.
because you have to do it over the weekend and then, you go to your 9 to 5. But I want to pick up that when you launched A Millennial Mind, that name itself is like amazing. But
Thank you.
when you started this on the day one, did you actually reach the top 10 UK mental
Yeah,
health
I
charts?
did. Yeah.
And I love that, and that blew my mind. So, how did you sort of create that visibility and impact? Because when I started with my first podcast, thanks to the speaker, I got views. I did not do anything to get the views. So, I really, really want to know that what is the strategy? Was it the
It wasn't
intentional?
one. Not at all. I mean, I still have no idea how that happened. I remember when I saw it, I was like, is this a joke? Because you get an email being like, you're in the chart. And I was like, oh, is this a scam? Is this like a spam email? But I will say, apparently, it's quite common that when a new show comes about, and back then there wasn't like hundreds and millions of thousands of shows that there are now, but it was like when a new show comes about and people listen to it and people were listening to it because, I'd spoken about the fact that I was going to do this podcast for so long. And my first guest was amazing. It was Mira Manic. She is still one of my really good friends. She's amazing. I didn't know her then. But we had such a great conversation and I really valued that conversation. And I really valued her because she really believed in me. Like I did not know her at all. And she was, took a punt on me and said yes to being on the show. I released her first. And the show was a number 10, which I found crazy. But I mean, it's an interesting one when you start because you get all of these things a little bit easier, I think. There was no strategy though, no,
Love
unfortunately.
that. Love that. I'm glad that happened for you then. But
Yeah, luck.
yeah, but sometimes, when it's meant to be, it just happens.
Yeah.
The stars get aligned. The podcast was on my vision board for 5 years, but this was the time when my boss gave me a hard time and I was having sleepless nights. And one night I literally woke up and I was journaling and I'm like, okay, one middle-aged bloke is not going to make me feel that way. And that's when I opened my vision board and I was like, you know what, I'm doing it. And so,
Amazing.
so sometimes you never know, how things turn
Yes.
out. But I want to pick up on something very, very amazing, which I have been following up because you have often talked about the importance of being an authentic self.
Mm.
But when you say authentic self, what do you mean by authentic self? Like the past self, present self, or future, authentic self? And because it's one of the most important beliefs, which actually, forms our rather identity. So if you can tell us about your views on that, because that's something really, really important and profound to actually learn and implement.
How would you describe your authentic self?
I think just being comfortable in my skin and not really thinking 100 times before what I think or how I think. So
Yeah.
at any point in time, and if you like it or leave it, I'm just gonna say what I want to. I mean, I'm not rude, but I wouldn't
Mm.
shy away from being judged.
Interesting. Okay. And I think the key when it comes to authentic self is like it has to feel right for you. And so this is why I think that what worries me about being online is I think everyone's trying to be each other. I really think that. I think there's very few people that are really authentic and are doing things because they want to do them. I
Hmm.
think that we have become all merged into one. Everyone's doing the same trend. Everyone's looking the same with the amount of Botox and filler we're all getting done. I just feel like everyone's kind of merging into one. And sometimes I feel that this message around authenticity is entangled with approval by other people as well.
Mm.
And I just feel that you will know within yourself if you're being authentic or not.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to understand at like different stages of your life, different things will mean different things to you. You know, things that I felt really passionate about a few years ago that were authentic to me then don't apply now.
Yeah.
And in the future, things that will feel really important for me might not feel important for me right now. You know, I think it's about really having spent enough time with yourself to understand what it is that you really want. And I also think when it comes to things, how do I put this? When it comes to things like approval, I think there's different layers to it. You can always seek approval from people because you want to feel as if you're being authentic. And I think that people are trying to fit the mold by saying, I'm being authentic. And I think it's a double, I think it's, and this is why I think it's so personal to each person. It's like what feels authentic to me will not feel authentic to you, and what feels authentic to you won't feel authentic to me. But I think it's so important when you're online to just share as openly as possible. And, you know, social media is a weird place. I have learned, like my biggest learning till this day that I still get shocked about is how much people lie. Like I see it with my own eyes, point blank. Someone will tell me one thing and then they say another thing, and I'm in total shock. And I always say this to my husband, and he's like, "Why are you so shocked?" And I'm like, I just don't get it. But
But
you know,
why, but why do you say that just in social media? Like people have been like this, right? It's just social media
yeah,
just being,
exacerbates it.
yes, yes.
Yeah, true, true.
But I also think that, being authentic, now I personally think, and thinking from my point of view, that if I'm the same person or thinking or speaking or behaving in the similar way, then also people find you more authentic. Like one day I have an opinion on something, and then the other day I would just shy away or I would try and fit in. I think that consistency also makes a lot.
True.
I genuinely believe that, because while I was studying at LBS, a friend of mine, she comes to me and she's like, how do you say what you say and no one hates you? And I do say like 50% of the things you say, and then everyone hates me. And I was like, I don't know, maybe the way you say, perhaps that's
Yeah,
the thing. Or maybe, and then I was like, no, you know what? I think because from the day one, people have seen me this way. You take it or leave it. And sometimes when you just come up with some things, might be backfired. I don't know. It could be that, but it's something which you actually learn to, and then you sleep peacefully at night more than anything else because you've not
yeah.
woken up to something really weird. But I want to know something about your TED Talk, because I did listen to it not just while I was doing the research for this interview, but long before. So, I mean, it's one of my dreams to be on a TED Talk. I did apply and I did not get selected from LBS. So I really have a lot of respect for someone who does it and did it. So I want to know that after the applaud faded and what shifted internally after doing a TED Talk, maybe personally, professionally, if you can tell us.
The honest answer is nothing. Nothing really changed after doing that. I think for me, I was I was so nervous to do it on the day. I was so nervous. I actually got invited by Warwick to go and do it.
Mhm.
And I remember when I was there thinking, like feeling really proud of myself. I felt really, really proud because I just thought it's so nice that, you know, in the place where I never felt comfortable, in the place where I struggled so much, they've now asked me to come
Full
back.
circle. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just felt like, oh, so happy. But, you know, once it was done, I was kind of relieved. You know, I was like, oh my God, thank God it's done. Like it's okay. But I think professionally, it doesn't really change loads. You know, I didn't see that I got like a sudden increase or anything. And I think a big part of that is I didn't really talk about it.
Mm.
I didn't feel, I've never shared my TED talk on my page. You'll never see a clip of it on my podcast on my channel, but also on my Instagram and on my TikTok.
Okay.
I very rarely talk about it. And I think it's because I haven't even ever listened to it. I feel so nervous to listen to it. I was so young. It was maybe now almost 3 years ago. And I don't feel like I was a confident speaker then. Like I said, I was very nervous. I practiced it in like 2 weeks. I just felt a lot of nervousness around it. But it was an amazing experience, and I would 100% do it again. But I definitely don't feel there was a significant shift because I didn't talk about it enough, if I'm completely honest. Yeah.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. And do you think that the clarity creates confidence, or does the confidence create clarity? Because the studies show that nearly 70% of the high achiever experience imposter syndrome at some point in their life.
100%.
So, if the confidence is built on the clarity, then personality, then how do you think that so many capable people still feel that imposters?
Because every single time you do something new and you challenge yourself, you will feel uncomfortable. And what these top 10%, 70% or whatever the stat is of people do is they constantly push themselves. You're constantly pushing yourself to be in a different environment, to be in a different challenge, to do a different thing. And so I think that it's a constant loop, The more competent you are, the more confident you become. And the more confident you become, the more competent you are. And it's just a cycle and it's just a loop. And the first step is taking action and deciding, what do I want and how am I going to get there? And just taking a very, very small action that you can do to get there. So a lot of people say, especially when it comes to the new year, like, how do I set my goals? And I just say, be really clear on what it is you want to do, and then write down everything you need to do to get there, and then just start. It's really as simple as that. And you always start with the smallest, easiest things so that you start to build habits that allow you and push you to get closer towards your goals. If you start with the most challenging one, it's going to demotivate you. It's going to make you feel exhausted. It's going to make you feel defeated. Whilst if you start with the easiest one, the first immediate thought is going to be like, I can do it. I can do the next one, and I can do the next one, and I can do the next one, and you build it. And so I always say to people, use it as like building blocks. Start with the most basic, start with the most simple, and then build it from there.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue to my next question, because I want to highlight that you started performance planner, we just talked about, because how important it is to actually structure what you want to do, even with the baby steps. Why do you think that people actually underestimate the short-term goals to overachieve long-term goals? And I also want to know that since you've educated people on the planner and you yourself are actually advocating that, why do you think we fail in the first 30 days of implementation?
I think the biggest reason people fail whenever they start any new goal is they haven't planned correctly. Now, one thing, and I was talking to someone about this today, is that, as you know from doing this podcast, it's not just get in front of a mic, put the mic up and start. It's not that simple. There is hours of preparation that need to go into it, but then also as a woman, you need to do your hair, you need to wear your lipstick, you need to wear the jewelry, you need to think about those things. If you're not scheduling time in to do that, you are going to fail. Because if you say, I want to start a podcast in the next month, and all I need to do to start a podcast is find a topic, get a mic, you write down every single thing, but you fundamentally miss out the key things like getting ready, looking presentable, wearing makeup, which a man doesn't have to think about. But if you miss those things out and you don't assign time to do those, you will not get the podcast done on time, and then you will think you are a failure, but you're not. You just didn't assign the time to do it. So in a day, when I write down, both me and my husband wake up at the same time, but he has to go to the gym every single morning. And that's something that for him, he has to absolutely do. Whilst for me, I don't really have that requirement. So whilst I have to get ready every single day and there's an hour of my time that's allocated to that, let's say I have to wash my hair and whatever, he doesn't have to think about that. Same, for example, when people say, okay, in a month, because in a month, let's say you have a job, right? A 9 to 5, and you say, okay, well, I want to start a podcast on the side. Okay, well, how much free time do you have? That's the first thing you need to anticipate. Now, when people do that, they overestimate how much free time they have because they don't think about calling their mum. They don't think about sorting out their in-laws. They don't think about making the school lunches. They don't think about going to get their nails done. So what you say is, I've got all this time. And then actually you don't have enough time. And then you set yourself these goals for the week. And because you don't have enough time to hit them, what you do is you say, I didn't do them, I'm such an idiot. You're not. The system you've created doesn't work for you. And that's why you're failing. And then you don't do it after week 1. So then you say, okay, I'm going to do double in week 2. But you don't have the time. You haven't planned it. Then you say, I'm going to do double in week 3. And then you get to week 4 and you think, forget it. What's the point? I'm just going to go back.
So the devil is in the detail, right?
it's in
Basic.
the system that you create. It's in the system that you create, and it has to be personalized to you. You have to be honest with yourself about how much time it takes you to do different things.
And you have coached so many hundreds of leaders and, interviewed so many people on your podcast. So what does one single common, successful people have? Like one particular characteristics you think that they all have in common, which you have identified?
Mm, I actually can't think of something on the top of my head.
Okay.
Um, I'm trying to think of one thing that everyone who's so successful has in mind. I guess just determination and grit. Like
Okay.
every single person I interview is determined. They are so motivated in what they're doing and passionate.
Hmm.
And I think that's why they continue. They've researched it, they've done things properly. It's not haphazard, it's very intuitive. It's almost like it's intuitive for them.
Mhm.
But they're also not all over the place. I think it's really nice. I love interviewing guests when they're so passionate about what they're doing,
Mm.
because it just is so amazing to see someone who's just really obsessed with what they're doing and they want to do things better.
Yeah, and that energy rubs onto you. So
100%.
I love that
100%.
too. I love that too. But historically, male leaders are often rewarded for being overconfident,
Yeah.
and then women are actually getting penalized. And McKinsey research shows that women are less likely to self-advocate themselves, and yet they're usually over-prepared. So
Mm,
that's really so interesting. So, what's the non-negotiable ritual you coach women, who are entrepreneurs or professionals to actually use just before walking into that boardroom or a very high pressured situation? So, just to neutralize the self-doubt or maybe, come across as a bit overconfident.
I've never told anyone not to be confident. I think I would always tell someone to feel confident. And I think there is definitely a barrier when it comes to women being confident. But I do think there's a difference between confidence and arrogance.
Yeah.
When you are somebody who is naturally quite confident, I think it's really important when you're to properly, when you go into a meeting, I think it's so important to properly introduce yourself and to give somebody context on who you are rather than just walking in this powerhouse and being like, okay, I am who I am. I would say that would be arrogance. But when you walk into a room and you're really kind to someone and you say, hey, it's really nice to meet you, I'm really excited to be here, you can still feel confident in doing that and just being really kind. You know, I've never had to coach anyone and say, like, you should do this or you should do that. But I think a lot of the time when people are feeling nervous, the biggest thing I remind them on is there is a difference between your body reacts in the same way as if you're feeling anxious or you're feeling nervous. Your stomach will kind of feel the same. You'll feel sick a little bit, but you just have to say, like, I'm excited about this opportunity. And if you are nervous for something, it's because you care. So I do a lot of reframing exercises with people, and it really does depend. But I always think it's so important to be very humble and to be very open when you're meeting people. And I think that also really helps other people to understand you rather than be resistant towards you.
Love that, love that. And Shani, we live in the AI world and all
Yeah.
this madness which is going on. So the neuroscience actually shows that the brain strengthens with, all the efforts we put in, the sustained focus, and yet we are actually increasing our dependability on, the AI, and we are becoming perhaps less intelligent because the brain is a
Yeah.
muscle and we're like constantly scrolling, swiping, not using completely our brain because we're dependent on this AI or chat GPT. So what's your view on that? And do you really think that we're becoming less intelligent or simply less present?
I think that AI is great for us in certain ways, but I also think it is great in terms of how do I put this? You can very easily tell when someone's done things from ChatGPT. Like I can tell when people in my team have something from ChatGPT, I'm like, it's so obvious. Like it's the wording is all the same. And this is what I was saying earlier when it comes to us all being the same. Very clear that like things are, people respond to you in a particular way. People, will, use ChatGPT to think of ideas. And this is where I think that authenticity is really not coming through. So whilst I think it can be a really great tool, I also think it's important to remember that we're individual for a reason. And so it's all about how you use it. I sometimes use it to transcribe things, or sometimes I use it to help me do research for people, but it's not accurate. You have to fact check it. And if you're not fact checking it and you're not getting things accurate, then you're not going to have those authentic relationships with people because you're not showing that you care. And so I think it's really important that we use ChatGPT and AI to our advantage, but we don't let it take over who we are, because that's when we start to actually lose those relationships with people and we start to kind of lose that connection too.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Next one. So, Shivani, every powerful journey has a valley, and so if you can share us with one of the biggest professional or personal setbacks you had, and in that moment you felt that it's brutal, but ultimately it became blessing in disguise. So maybe you learned something really profound from that, if you can share with us.
When I think this was a year before I quit my job, maybe a year and a half, I took a sabbatical from my job and I said, you know what, I'm going to try the podcast and I'm going to take 3 months out and then I'm never going to go back to work. And I remember everyone at the time was like, you're going to go back to your job if you have it there. You need to properly quit. And I was like, no, 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 no. I'm going to make sure I do it. I achieved absolutely nothing. I made zero money in 3 months. I did absolutely nothing. I don't even know what I was doing in that time, but I think I was dividing my attention between coaching and the planner and the podcast, and I just could not do it all. And it really made me realize that how much I need to focus in on just doing one thing first and then build everything else up. So, my planner is something that I don't focus on really at all anymore. I only really sell them when I do speaker events and then I sell them alongside that. But I don't have I don't really do anything when it comes to selling the actual product itself anymore. I don't really do it because I can't focus on multiple things at once. And, once I actually stopped focusing on all three things and I focused just on the podcast, that's actually when the podcast really grew. And by doing that, it allowed me to quit my job and then to sustain and do it. So, one of the biggest lessons I always look back on is that time where I tried to do so many things thinking that, if I do a little bit, then it will be fine. But yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah. So I think I'm also hyper focused. I can't do like 100 things together. So
Yeah, it's amazing. I don't have that quality. I always want to change. So that's something I
yeah,
need to focus on.
yeah, fair enough. And last but not the least, what is that one piece of advice you would give it to all the listeners listening today, that maybe one actionable or something which you think that people should listen?
I really think that everybody should try and understand what their strengths are. Every single thing that you've been criticized for in life has a strength on the other side of it. And so if you can't figure out what your strengths are, just think about all the things that you're criticized for. If someone's called you too sensitive, you're really empathetic. If someone said you're really bossy, maybe you're just a fantastic leader and you're really organized. If someone says like you're really laid back, well, maybe you're really a relaxed person and you're really calm. So behind every single criticism that someone says, there's always a strength on the other side. And that's something I would really encourage people to do, is figure out their strengths, lead from their strengths, and just focus on your strengths.
Love that. Love that. And on that note, I'm going to end this podcast. But before I let you go, I'm going to ask some rapid fire questions.
Cool.
Whatever comes to your mind, just bring it on.
Cool.
One podcast episode fundamentally, or one podcast in general, actually fundamentally shifted your perspective, not your own?
Mel Robbins.
Okay. The non-fiction book you recommend people to read?
7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
I love that too. One non-negotiable self-care routine?
Walk every single day.
I recently saw your
Yeah.
post on that. What's one thing you would tell your 16 years old self if you meet her today?
You are intelligent.
The single best piece of advice you've ever received?
Don't quit on a bad day.
What's one belief that help people function, but actually they stop them feeling fulfilled?
Sorry?
What's that one belief that people help function, but doesn't make them feel fulfilled?
What's one belief that helps people function but doesn't make them feel fulfilled?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. Money?
Yeah, okay. The bravest thing you've ever said it out loud.
I don't want to do that.
Absolutely. What does success mean to you today?
Doing what I love and feeling happy every day. Actually, that's rubbish because you don't feel happy every day. So that's actually not true. I think that's the ideal version, but I don't feel happy every single day. So that's a lie. What does success mean for me? I think if I'm not growing every single year, I don't feel like I'm successful. I have to grow in every part of my life, in my relationship, with my podcast, with my social media, with my finances. I feel like every year, as long as I'm growing, it's okay.
The most common emotional red flag you spot in potential founder.
The unwillingness to learn.
If you could host one person who is your dream guest for a millennial mind.
Dale Carnegie. I don't know if he's still alive though.
Yeah, it's okay. Historical.
Yeah.
If the best version of you had one rule every day, what that would be?
Never let anybody impact your energy.
And if someone listening had to fix just one habit to improve their life or career, what should that be?
Their relationship with themselves.
Wow, love that. On that note, Shivani, thank you so much for this conversation. This was
Thank you.
quite grounding and very, very powerful. And you reminded us that confidence isn't about being the loudest in the room, but it's about having your own relationship and be anchored in your own truth. And our voices don't need permissions or polish or perfection, but they need presence.
Yeah.
And to everybody who's listening today, remember this is not just a podcast, it's a global sisterhood, it's a warm hug, it's a coffee date. So just like Shivani, just stop fitting into your old blueprint and stop confronting into the societal rules and build your own financial system, bet on your vision, and never underestimate the power of you. So on that note, thank you so much. And until next time, stay powerful, stay amazing, and stay clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to You Are a Force. Hit subscribe and join us next week for more powerful stories from women rewriting the rules. Until then, keep building, keep leading, and remember, you are a force.